What if I told you that the story of human civilization of trade, war, fire, and collapse is inseparable from one single measure? Not iron, oil, and silicon, but gold. And what if I also told you that much of what you believe about gold, that it's a safe asset, a hedge against inflation, the eternal store of value, is built on illusions, fragile bargains, and political decisions that have collapsed again and again? This is the hidden history of gold, how it enthralled kings and bankers for millennia, how it built and broke civilizations, and how we may already be living through its next great transformation. Your assumptions are about to be challenged. The question is this: when did gold stop being the treasure of gods and become the backbone of money? And why did we tear that backbone out? Let's find out. Long before banks, long before coins, gold shimmered in the imaginations of humans. Chemically inert, impossible to corrode, and dazzlingly rare, it seemed to defy nature's decay. Gold doesn't rust, it doesn't tarnish, it survives time itself, and so, to early humans, it symbolized eternity. The oldest gold artifacts ever discovered, found in Varna, Bulgaria, date back more than 6,000 years, centuries before the pyramids. Even then, gold wasn't used for tools or weapons. It was used for ornaments, masks, and ritual objects. It was never practical. It was sacred. In Egypt, gold was tied to the divine. The pharaoh's flesh was said to be made of it. The metal of the sun god Ra. To hold gold was to hold a fragment of immortality. That symbolic power turned gold into something far greater than wealth. It became legitimacy itself. Kings ruled by the right of gold. But at some point, humanity crossed a threshold. The glitter of temples became the currency of merchants. Somewhere between the 7th and 6th centuries BC, in a kingdom called Lydia, gold transformed into money. The Lydians created the world's first standardized coins, stamped pieces of gold and silver known as electrum. Suddenly, gold wasn't just decoration. It was exchange, measurement, and power. Once that happened, history shifted. Empires learned that whoever controlled gold could control trade, and whoever controlled trade could control the world. The Persian Empire demanded tribute in gold. The Greeks waged wars for it. The Romans institutionalized it. They minted gold coins called aureus, extracted from conquered territories, especially from the gold mines of Dacia, modern-day Romania. For centuries, the Roman Empire's monetary system revolved around the promise that its coins contained a fixed amount of gold. But that promise was fragile. As the empire's expenses grew, soldiers to pay, walls to build, enemies to fight, emperors began to cheat. They reduced the gold content of coins while keeping their face value. The same symbol, less substance. Over time, inflation rotted the foundation of the Roman economy. When trust died, so did the empire's financial order. The lesson would repeat, century after century. After Rome fell, Europe fractured. Gold became scarce, hoarded by the few, worshipped by the church, and nearly absent from daily trade. Silver filled the gap, but the prestige of gold never vanished. In Byzantium, the golden Salatus coin remained a mark of stability. In the Islamic world, the dinar minted in pure gold became the backbone of an economy that stretched from Spain to India. As medieval Europe revived, cities like Florence and Venice reintroduced gold coinage. The florin and the ducat, they became the trusted coins of merchants across the Mediterranean. The world was once again wired together by gold, not because it was convenient, but because people believed in its incorruptibility. Then came the age of empires and the discovery that changed everything. When the Spanish stumbled upon the New World in the late 15th century, they found mountains of silver and rivers of gold. Ship after ship carried treasure back to Europe, fueling trade, warfare, and ambition. But this flood of metal also brought inflation, as too much gold and silver chased too few goods. The Golden Age was also an age of distortion. By the 17th century, gold was not just treasure, it was policy. Monarchs and merchants realized that control over gold meant control over credit and currency. In England, this realization led to a profound transformation. The Bank of England was established in 1694, creating a national institution to manage gold-backed notes. People no longer carried gold itself, they carried promises of gold. That promise hardened into law in 1816. When Britain formally declared gold as the sole standard of value, every paper pound could, in theory, be converted into a precise weight of gold. It was the birth of the modern gold standard, a system so seductive that nearly every major nation copied it by the late 19th century. This was the classical gold standard, a world where money was not whatever government said it was, but whatever gold allowed it to be. If a country printed too much money, gold would flow out, forcing deflation and discipline. In theory, it was a perfect machine, self-correcting, automatic, global. But it was also brittle, because when crisis came, as it always does, the machine cracked. In 1914, the world went to war. Governments needed guns, soldiers, and ships, and the gold standard was a straitjacket, so they cut it loose. They suspended convertibility, printed money, and borrowed without limit. Gold was no longer the master. War was. When peace returned, politicians dreamed of restoring the old order. Winston Churchill, as Britain's chancellor, famously brought the country back to gold in 1925 at the pre-war exchange rate, a rate that overvalued the pound and strangled exports. Unemployment soared. Industry collapsed. The romantic ideal of sound money became economic suicide. Then came 1929. The Great Depression shattered what was left of the gold illusion. As banks failed and economies spiraled, countries abandoned gold one by one, choosing survival over orthodoxy. In the United States, President Roosevelt went further. In 1933, he made private ownership of gold illegal, forcing citizens to turn in their coins and bars to the government. The dollar was devalued overnight, its link to gold severed. The message was clear: gold would no longer rule. After World War II, the world tried again to blend the discipline of gold with the flexibility of politics. The result was the Bretton Woods system, born in 1944. Under it, the US dollar became the world's reserve currency, convertible into gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. Other nations pegged their currencies to the dollar. It was a gold standard, but only for government. For 2 decades, it worked. The system brought stability and growth, but beneath the surface, a familiar pattern was emerging. The United States was spending more than it earned, running deficit, printing dollars to finance war and welfare. Foreign nations began to doubt that America could honor its promise. One by one, they started demanding gold in exchange for their dollars. U.S. gold reserves drained away. In 1971, President Nixon made a fateful announcement. On August 15, he closed the gold window, ending the dollar's convertibility to gold. In that single act, the last tie between money and metal was cut. The world had entered a new age, an age of pure fiat money, backed only by trust and government decree. At first, it seemed liberating. Central banks could finally respond to recession, fund public projects, and manage growth without worrying about how much gold sat in their vaults. But freedom had a price. Without gold's constraint, governments could also inflate, borrow, and spend without limit. The following decades were a test of that freedom. Inflation exploded in the 1970s, interest rates soared, and the world learned that unanchored money can spin out of control. Gold, once again, became a refuge. Its price rose from $35 to over $800 an ounce by 1980, reflecting global panic about paper money. Then came cycles of boom and bust, deregulation and debt, culminating in the world we know today, one built entirely on faith in central banks. Gold, meanwhile, retreated into symbolism, a relic of another age, sitting quietly in vaults, waiting. Governments tried to fix the system through monetary innovation, floating exchange rates, inflation targets, quantitative easing, but the core issue remained. The anchor was gone. Gold couldn't be brought back without breaking everything modern finance depends on. Its supply is too limited, its politics too rigid, its mechanics incompatible with digital liquidity. Every attempt to return to gold has failed for the same reason. People want stability, but they also want growth, credit, and flexibility, and you can't have all three. Yet, the story doesn't end there. In the last decade, something unexpected has happened. Central banks around the world, from China to Russia to India, have quietly started buying gold again, at record level. They've added more than 1,000 tons per year, doubling their pace from the previous decade. Why? Because the geopolitical balance is shifting. As trust in the US dollar system erodes under the weight of sanctions, debt, and politics, nations are once again reaching for the one asset that lies beyond control: gold. By 2025, central banks collectively hold around 36,000 tons of it, the highest since the end of Bretton Woods. Gold is re-entering the conversation not as currency, but as insurance, a neutral reserve in a polarized world. At the same time, gold's price has surged past $3,500 an ounce, defying predictions and correlation models. It no longer moves neatly with interest rates or inflation. It moves with fear, geopolitical risk, financial instability, and distrust of fiat promises. And while gold returns in vault, a new kind of gold rush happens online. Bitcoin, often called digital gold, tries to inherit gold's old role, a scarce, decentralized store of value beyond state control. Its story mirrors gold's own meteoric rise, speculative frenzy, cycles of boom and despair. The same ancient tension plays out in code, the dream of hard money versus the reality of human behavior. Across 5,000 years, one pattern repeats. Societies expand, credit, overextend, collapse, then seek a new anchor. Gold reappears in moments of doubt. When trust in paper and politics breaks down, it is both the memory and the measure of financial morality. First, gold is not just a commodity. It's a mirror reflecting how civilizations think about value, trust, and permanence. Every empire that rose on gold's foundation eventually fell when it abandoned its discipline or overreached its means. Second, a monetary anchor is a double-edged sword. Gold's greatest virtue was its discipline, its greatest flaw, its rigidity. The perfect system, one that balances stability with flexibility, has never existed. Every era swings between the two, never finding rest. Third, the search for real money never ends. Gold, silver, paper, digital tokens, all are expressions of the same desire, to make value permanent in an impermanent world. But permanence is an illusion. The belief is what matters, not the metal. The warning is clear. Every monetary order looks stable until the moment it isn't. When trust erodes, systems collapse faster than anyone expects. History shows that the end always begins in disbelief, the quiet conviction that this time is different. Perhaps that's the true secret of gold. It doesn't just store value, it stores memory. It waits patiently, buried in vaults and myths, until the world once again forgets what money really is. If this story of gold, the metal that built civilizations, has given you something to think about, take a moment to explore further. Look into how gold shaped your own country's history. Watch how central banks behave. Question what money really means. And if you found value in this journey, consider subscribing, sharing, or commenting below. Do you believe gold will ever return as the foundation of money? Or has its time finally passed? Because as long as trust is fragile, the story of gold will never end. The metal waits gleaming, silent, eternal, for the next civilization that thinks it has learned to live without it.